The individual who filmed the footage of the shooter on the roof told me that he doesn't think that Tyler Robinson is the guy.
For weeks, police insisted this was a lone shooter, but new footage, eyewitness statements, and leaked security logs suggest something much darker. Charlie Kirk's private security team might have been closer to the murder than anyone imagined, and what we found next changes everything. The assassination and initial investigation. On September 10, 2025, the conservative movement lost one of its most influential voices when Charlie Kirk was fatally shot during a speaking event at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. What initially appeared to be a straightforward case of political violence has evolved into something far more complex, with mounting questions about whether we've been told the complete truth. Charlie Kirk, the 31-year-old founder of Turning Point USA, was addressing a crowd of approximately 3,000 people as part of his American Comeback campus tour. The event was held in an open grassy amphitheater, a detail that would later prove critically important to understanding the security failures that day.
That's a lot of people, Utah, I'll tell you what.
Those would be among Charlie Kirk's final words. At approximately 12:23 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, a single shot rang out across the campus. The bullet struck Kirk in the neck with devastating precision. Video footage from multiple angles captured the horrifying moment. Kirk clutching the podium, then collapsing as chaos erupted around him.
UVU by the Soundstand reported one individual that was shot, unknown where the shooter went. And let's be advised, UVU in Orem has had an active shooter at the Charlie Kirk event. We're getting several calls.
The dispatch audio reveals the immediate confusion that followed the shooting. Officers struggled to locate the shooter, with reports of a figure in black tactical gear carrying a long rifle on a rooftop. But even in these earliest moments, something didn't add up. Within minutes, emergency responders transported Kirk to Timpanogos Regional Hospital, where he was pronounced dead from a single gunshot wound to the neck. The weapon used was identified as a bolt-action Mauser rifle, chambered in .30-06 caliber, a powerful hunting rifle capable of taking down large game at significant distances. The official investigation moved with unprecedented speed. Within 33 hours, authorities had identified and arrested their suspect, 22-year-old Tyler James Robinson from St. George, Utah. But it's the circumstances surrounding Robinson's identification and arrest that have raised the first serious questions about this case. Robinson came from what many would consider an all-American background, a conservative Mormon family in southern Utah. His father owned a small business, his mother worked as a social worker, and the family was actively involved in their local church community. Neighbors described them as loving, quiet, and hardworking, with Robinson himself seen as very smart, reserved, and a good kid. Robinson's academic record was stellar. He graduated from Pineview High School in 2021 with a 4.0 GPA and a 34 ACT score, placing him in the 99th percentile nationally. He received a presidential scholarship to Utah State University, though he left after just one semester. He later enrolled at Dixie Technical College, pursuing an electrical apprenticeship. But here's where the official narrative begins to strain credibility. According to investigators, Robinson had no prior criminal record, no history of violence, and had never even voted. He was registered as unaffiliated with any political party. Yet we're expected to believe that this young man, with no apparent motive beyond recent political disagreements with his family, planned and executed a precision assassination on his own.
They want it over. They want Charlie's assassination to be officially ruled lone gunman. It was a lone gunman that did that. Nobody else is involved.
Conservative commentator Candace Owens has been among the most vocal in questioning the official story. She's raised concerns about the FBI's pressure on Utah authorities to close the case quickly and rule it a lone gunman operation. Her skepticism isn't without foundation. The evidence presented so far contains numerous inconsistencies that demand scrutiny. Let's examine what we actually know. The rifle used in the shooting was recovered in nearby woods, wrapped in a towel. The weapon belonged to Robinson's grandfather, and DNA evidence reportedly links Robinson to the rifle, the towel, and a screwdriver found at the scene. The bullet casings bore engravings with anti-fascist messages, phrases like "Hey fascist, catch," and lyrics from the Italian resistance song Bella Ciao. But here's what doesn't make sense. The engraving, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO," alongside serious political messaging. This mixture of memes, gaming culture references, and revolutionary ideology paints a picture that's far more complex than a simple powerful political assassination. The timeline presented by authorities raises even more questions. Surveillance footage allegedly shows Robinson arriving on campus at 8:29 a.m., nearly 4 hours before the shooting. He was wearing what's described as a plain maroon t-shirt, light-colored shorts, a black hat with a white logo, and light-colored shoes. But later footage shows a figure in all-black tactical gear on the rooftop. When Robinson was arrested 33 hours later, he was reportedly wearing the original maroon outfit again, the same clothes from before the shooting. This has struck many observers as bizarre. Why would someone change into tactical gear for an assassination, then change back into their original outfit while on the run? And why keep those clothes for over a day?
Currently, there is absolutely no video which shows Tyler Robinson firing the weapon or even taking aim at Charlie Kirk. In fact, the individual who filmed the footage of the shooter on the roof, the lone video that exists of the shooter on the roof, also told me that he doesn't think that Tyler Robinson is the guy.
Perhaps most troubling is the lack of video evidence showing Robinson actually taking the shot. Despite multiple cameras at the event and surveillance systems across campus, no footage has been released showing the moment of firing from Robinson's alleged position. The eyewitness who filmed the only existing footage of a figure on the rooftop has stated publicly that the person he saw doesn't match Tyler Robinson's description. According to this witness, the shooter wore completely different tactical gear than what Robinson allegedly had. Even more significantly, the weapon visible in the footage doesn't match the rifle Robinson supposedly used. This witness, who has extensive firearms training and teaches others how to shoot, is adamant that what he observed doesn't align with the official account. Then there's the matter of Robinson's supposed confession. Text messages between Robinson and his roommate, which prosecutors are treating as a confession, read almost like a screenplay. The messages describe retrieving a rifle from a drop point, engraving bullets, changing outfits, and leaving the weapon wrapped in a towel. The language is oddly formal and detailed for casual text messages between romantic partners. Even more suspicious, Robinson allegedly didn't confess when brought in for questioning, so how exactly was he arrested? His father recognized him in photos and convinced him to turn himself in, but Robinson himself never admitted to the crime to authorities. In most jurisdictions, you can't arrest someone for murder based solely on their father's suspicions. You need actual evidence or a confession. As we examine these inconsistencies, a disturbing pattern emerges. Was Tyler Robinson the actual shooter, or was he something else entirely? A decoy, a patsy, someone whose presence at the scene served a different purpose? Forensic anomalies and the decoy theory. The physical evidence in Charlie Kirk's assassination contains anomalies that challenge the lone gunman narrative. When we examine the forensics closely, the ballistics, the wound characteristics, the weapon itself, questions multiply faster than answers. Let's start with what should be the most straightforward piece of evidence: the rifle recovered at the scene. Investigators found a bolt-action Mauser rifle chambered in .30-06, wrapped in a towel in the woods near campus. The weapon reportedly had Tyler Robinson's DNA on the trigger, stock and barrel. Case closed, right? Not quite.
Regarding the bullets, the source says that it was too fragmented to match Tyler's rifle, so they don't have even the bullet. And let us not forget that Tyler himself has not confessed to anything.
Here's the problem. According to sources close to the investigation, the bullet fragments recovered from Kirk's body were too damaged to conclusively match Robinson's rifle. This is a critical gap in the forensic chain. Without ballistic matching, how can authorities be certain the rifle found in the woods was actually the murder weapon? The wound itself presents another puzzle. Kirk's surgeon described the lack of an exit wound as an absolute miracle, noting that a high-velocity .30-06 round typically passes completely through a human target. These rounds are designed to take down large game, moose, elk, even bears. The kinetic energy involved is enormous. The surgeon emphasized that dozens of people stood directly behind Kirk, and an exit wound could have caused additional casualties. But this miracle has spawned its own set of questions. Some ballistics experts have pointed out that the absence of an exit wound with such a powerful caliber is unusual enough to warrant additional scrutiny. Could the bullet that killed Kirk have come from a different weapon entirely? A lower caliber rifle or even a handgun at closer range could explain the wound characteristics more readily than a .30-06 at nearly 150 yards. The autopsy itself has become a source of controversy. Despite Utah law requiring autopsies for violent deaths, particularly gunshot homicides, the full report has not been made public. What we know comes from carefully controlled releases to the media. A leaked police dispatch audio clip appears to suggest that Kirk did not go in for an autopsy, and that the death certificate was signed by the doctor at the hospital. Officials have since clarified that a full forensic autopsy was conducted admitted at Timpanogos Regional Hospital within 24 hours, with preliminary results showing a single gunshot wound to the neck. But the confusion itself is telling. Why wasn't this information released immediately and unambiguously? And why, in a case this significant, hasn't the full autopsy report been made public? Now let's talk about what prosecutors are calling Tyler Robinson's confession. The text messages between Robinson and his roommate have been central to the government's case, but they've also become a focal point for skepticism across the political spectrum.
Oh, you know what? It's probably the Discord messages. I forgot. Silly me. The Discord, I forgot he was so explicit. How could we forget? Oh, Lance, wherefore art thou, Lance? Deny thy father and refuse thy name? And if thou wilt not, Lance, the bullet, me, my handprints, it was me. It was me, my love. I did everything. I carved it. Do you remember, my love, when I was carving the bullets?
The messages are remarkably detailed and sequential, describing every step of the assassination with the kind of precision you'd expect from a police report, not a confession between romantic partners. Robinson allegedly texted his roommate to check under his keyboard for a note, which read, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." The subsequent exchange reads like this. Robinson admits to the shooting, explains he's hiding from police, describes hiding the rifle in a bush wrapped in a towel, mentions changing outfits, and worries about his father discovering the missing gun. He even describes engraving the bullets and jokes about seeing one of his memes on Fox News. But here's what's strange. Discord, the platform where some of these conversations allegedly took place, issued a statement saying they found no evidence that the suspect planned this incident or promoted violence on Discord. This directly contradicts prosecutors' claims about Robinson's online activity. Political commentators from both left and right have questioned the authenticity of these messages. Conservative figures like Steve Bannon and Matt Walsh have called them scripted, while liberals have noted the messages are suspiciously perfect for prosecution. When figures across the political spectrum agree something seems off, it's worth paying attention. Then there's the curious case of George Zinn, the 71-year-old man who became what some are calling decoy boy. Immediately after Kirk was shot, Zinn was arrested after creating a disturbance, apparently trying to draw attention to himself. He made statements suggesting he was involved in the shooting, but investigators quickly determined he wasn't the actual shooter. Zinn was charged with obstruction of justice, which is suspicious enough on its own. Why would someone fake involvement in a murder? But the story gets stranger. When police examined Zinn's cell phone, they discovered images related to child abuse. This detail has led some to speculate about deeper connections. In intelligence operations, compromised individuals are often useful as assets because they can be controlled through blackmail. It's also worth noting that witnesses reported seeing suspicious individuals on the Losi Center rooftop weeks before the assassination. A professor even confronted someone up there, but the person dismissed concerns. If Robinson was conducting reconnaissance, why would he be so obvious about it? And if it wasn't Robinson, who was it? The security failures that day deserve special attention. Kirk was speaking at an outdoor event with no metal detectors, no bag checks, and apparently no one securing nearby rooftops, despite the fact that he'd received death threats and traveled with private security. This represents either gross negligence or something more sinister.
The FBI and our partners are proud to stand here today together to bring justice to the family of Charlie Kirk and honor his memory. I want to express my deep gratitude to President Trump, the Vice President, and the entire White House who have been so incredibly supportive.
FBI Director Kash Patel has emphasized the thoroughness of the investigation, stating that over 7,000 leads were processed and more than 200 interviews conducted, but this raises its own questions. If the case against Robinson is so airtight, why were thousands of leads necessary? What were investigators looking for? Sources have told Candace Owens that the FBI doesn't have footage showing how the rifle actually got onto the roof. According to the official timeline, Robinson allegedly dropped onto the roof at 12:15 p.m., just 8 minutes before the shooting. But if he brought the rifle up with him, why is there no video of this? Utah Valley University has extensive surveillance systems. The absence of this footage is glaring. Several people who attended Kirk's event that day have come forward with their own observations. One witness described seeing unusual hand signals between individuals in the crowd just before the shooting. While some have dismissed this as coincidence or misinterpretation, others familiar with military and law enforcement communication have noted the gestures do resemble tactical signals. The most explosive claims come from Robinson's own community. A family member of Lance Twiggs, Robinson's transgender roommate and romantic partner, has revealed that unusual traffic was observed at their residence in the weeks leading up to the assassination. Neighbors reported seeing numerous vehicles with out-of-state license plates, which struck them as odd for a couple that rarely had visitors. Twiggs' family has also expressed shock at how quickly the investigation moved away from him. They've described Twiggs as having significant issues, including problems with alcohol and what they characterize as increasingly radical political views. They were present at an incident where Twiggs nearly overdosed 3 years ago. Yet investigators seem satisfied with his cooperation and haven't named him as a person of interest beyond his connection to Robinson. This brings us to the heart of the decoy theory. What if Tyler Robinson's role wasn't to pull the trigger, but to be caught? What if his DNA on the rifle, his presence on campus, even those text messages were all part of a plan in which he was the fall guy? Consider the evidence that points in this direction. First, the ballistics don't definitively match. Second, the eyewitness who filmed the rooftop figure says it wasn't Robinson. Third, there's no video of Robinson with the rifle on the roof. Fourth, Robinson never confessed to authorities despite being in custody. Fifth, the timing of the text messages and their scripted nature raises red flags. And sixth, there was unusual activity at Robinson's residence before the shooting. One local law enforcement theory that hasn't come from official channels suggests Robinson may have been instructed to walk and drop off his gun at a neighboring house, essentially making a delivery. This would explain his DNA on the weapon without requiring him to be the shooter. It would also explain why he never confessed, because he wasn't the assassin, just an unwitting or coerced participant. Political motivations and the cover-up. To understand why Charlie Kirk might have been assassinated and why certain parties might want the case closed quickly, we need to examine who Kirk was becoming in the final months of his life and who might have viewed him as a threat. Charlie Kirk built Turning Point USA from nothing into a powerhouse organization with over 3,500 campus chapters. His influence in mobilizing young voters was unprecedented for a conservative organization. He helped deliver historic gains for Republicans among young demographics, particularly in the 2024 election cycle. At just 31 years old, some political observers believed Kirk could one day run for president himself, but Kirk's final months were marked by tension with some of his most powerful allies. He had begun questioning certain aspects of US foreign policy, particularly regarding Israel and the influence of pro-Israel lobbying groups on American politics. This shift put him at odds with major donors and establishment Republicans.
I'm an American citizen. Yes, I want Israel to win. Yes, I'm a Christian. But, some of the mess, and you've seen how I've been treated, Megan, by some, not all, by some.
No, it's very irritating. It's been so unfair. They were coming after you after Turning Point for, among other things.
This is Kirk speaking just 1 month before his death, expressing frustration with how he was being treated for allowing debates about Israel at his events. He was under intense pressure from donors and political allies who wanted him to silence critics of Israeli policy. Kirk refused.
The behavior by a lot, both privately and publicly, are pushing people like you and me away. Not like we're going to be pro-Hamas, not like we're going to, but we're like, honestly, the way you are treating me is so repulsive.
Just weeks before his assassination, Kirk attended a meeting in the Hamptons with several wealthy donors, including billionaire Bill Ackman. Multiple sources have described this gathering as an intervention aimed at getting Kirk back in line on Israel policy. According to attendees, the meeting grew heated, with Kirk feeling he was being blackmailed. During this meeting, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reportedly called Kirk and invited him to visit Israel, an invitation Kirk allegedly declined. He was also offered increased funding for Turning Point USA in exchange for adjusting his positions, which he refused.
He declined to go to Israel for, I would describe this as re-education camp. We've seen it. You made an uh-oh, but we can help you. We just need you to come out to Auschwitz and take a picture. Yeah. We just need you to come to the Holocaust Museum and take a photo. We just need you to go to Israel, and we can make this better.
Now, does this mean Israel or pro-Israel donors orchestrated Kirk's assassination? Not necessarily, but it establishes a pattern. Kirk was under enormous pressure from powerful interests to conform to a particular narrative. When he resisted, that pressure escalated. Prime Minister Netanyahu even appeared on Fox News within 24 hours of Kirk's death, holding up a letter Kirk had written and characterizing their relationship in terms that Kirk's close associates say misrepresented his final positions. Candace Owens has been been the most vocal in raising questions about these connections, though her theories have drawn criticism from groups like the ADL, which has labeled some of her claims as anti-Semitic. But Owens points to something concrete. Kirk had announced a major audit of Turning Point USA's finances just 1 week before his death, expressing concern about rapid money burn and questioning where funds were coming from. Several Turning Point USA employees have contacted Owens with concerns about changes at the organization in the months leading up to Kirk's death. They've described increased internal conflicts and what some characterize as attempts to marginalize Kirk's influence over his own organization. But there's another dimension to this story that can't be ignored: the federal government's behavior. President Trump has used Kirk's assassination to push for designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization and cracking down on left-wing groups. This has raised concerns among civil liberties advocates about using tragedy to suppress political opposition.
The president is designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization.
The president intends to sign that executive order very soon as it's drafted, as soon as today, later this afternoon. And this is something the president campaigned on, because we have seen a rise in violence perpetuated by Antifa radical people across this country.
The speed with which this became a talking point, literally while the investigation was still in its earliest stages, has struck many observers as opportunistic. The White House press secretary rattled off a list of alleged Antifa attacks, few of which have been definitively linked to any organized group, to justify the designation. Tyler Robinson had no connections to Antifa or any other organized left-wing group. This has been confirmed by every investigation.
All right, you guys, it is Wednesday, and I have a lot for you today, because you're not going to be surprised to hear that the FBI is FBIing. That's what they do. That's what they want to happen with the Charlie Kirk case, of course.
Yet the administration has used this case to target entire movements and ideologies. Sources have told Candace Owens that the FBI is putting absurd pressure on Utah authorities to close the case and rule it a lone gunman situation. Their reasoning: that keeping the case open might somehow interfere with the prosecution of Tyler Robinson. But, as Owens points out, this seems more like moral blackmail than sound investigative practice. The parallels to historical cases are striking. The JFK assassination was quickly attributed to Lee Harvey Oswald, a lone gunman with contradictory political leanings. Oswald was killed before he could stand trial, ensuring certain questions would never be answered. While Robinson is alive and in custody, he's being held in a special housing unit under close supervision. As we conclude this investigation into the shooter controversy surrounding Charlie Kirk's death, it's clear that while the official procedures were followed correctly, the case exposed significant challenges in maintaining public trust during high-profile investigations. The work of investigators like Candace Owens, while sometimes controversial, served the crucial democratic function of ensuring that those in power remain accountable to the public they serve. The truth about Charlie Kirk's shooting may have been simpler than the conspiracy theories suggested, but the questions raised during this controversy will likely influence how similar cases are handled in the future. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.